So this is a moment in which we take ourselves to a place within where no one else can enter, where there is no opinion, no question. It's a place where you alone can visit. So I would ask you at this time to release all that you came into this place with, all the issues, good, bad, or indifferent, and just come to a place in mind. Let the music take you to that place. And just know that you are the life of God being lived. That all power is given unto you to live, to be, to do. There's a voice within that speaks to us over and over. Just listen. Listen knowing that it's your Father's good pleasure for you to have peace, wisdom, understanding, health, strength, and the abundance of all good things. This is a wonderful time of the year to begin again. Let all the failures of the past fall away. Broken dreams, broken relationships. This is a moment to heal. Draw near to the throne that is within you and listen. I will not leave you nor forsake you, for wherever I am, you ought to be. Come unto me, all who labor and find rest. Come to this place and be restful. All is well. All has been well. All will be well. All must be well. Just join with spirit in this moment and let life flow freely in and through you, energizing, revitalizing, vivifying, knowing that you have been chosen to live this life and to seek life abundantly. Realize that all the gifts of spirit are within you. And the only person living your life is you. Take responsibility for your life. And welcome the new change that is taking place. Free yourself and be at peace. Anything coming from the outside is not important. Don't judge yourself by the opinions of others. Declare who you are and begin to live who you are. I'm a spiritual being in the process of becoming. Every moment, every person, every occasion in my life is there to open doors for me to come to know more of myself and my interconnection with the Spirit of the universe. The more I embrace myself and embrace the Spirit of the universe and become one with it, all things are in order. Just feel the peace. Feel the wholeness. Just release and embrace all of spirit, that creative force within you. Give it control and expand. Become more and give thanks. And so it is.
We're doing the song? Okay. You will find in your bulletins a song sheet, and we will be singing I Am God's Melody of Life.
A
Today's lesson, Disobedience, will be given by Bianca Gabriel.
Good morning. Good morning. To disobey means not observe, ignore, disregard, pay no attention to. There are many stories in the Bible where disobedience occurs. But for the next few minutes, we will discuss the story of Samson and Delilah. Samson was born to Manoah and his wife. Before his birth, an angel appeared to his wife and said to her, "For lo, thou shalt conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come on his head," meaning you shall not cut his hair off. "For the child shall be a Nazarite unto God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hands of the Philistines." Before I go any further, let's go and look and see what Nazarite means. Nazarite, one chosen or set apart, one consecrated to God by a vow. It represents a consciousness from birth that is dedicated to goodness. Now about Samson. In Hebrew, Samson means sun-like, sunny, distinguished. Metaphysically, Samson means physical strength under spiritual discipline. It represents judgment used with great strength. Samson, like John the Baptist, was a Nazarite. He was consecrated to God before his birth as one who should begin to save Israel out of the hands of the Philistines. As a Nazarite, Samson vowed total abstinence from all intoxicating liquors, that his hair should go uncut, and that all contamination with dead bodies should be avoided by him. It was usually a temporary vow, but Samson and John the Baptist were Nazarites for life. Now we come to Delilah. In Hebrew, Delilah means exhausted, pining with desire, lustful pining, languishing, and longing. Metaphysically, it means sensuality, pure and simple. It is important to remember that Delilah is not so pure and simple. She was a Philistine. She stands for sensuality in its negative aspect. This can be very seductive at times, and if we let it divert our good judgment, it can rob our judgment of its strength. Sensuality of itself is neither good or evil. It is a fact of life and a normal function of the human nature. But when sensuality assumes a negative or harmful aspect of a person's life, then it becomes a danger. It is this dangerous aspect of sensuality which is meant when a Bible character who symbolizes sensuality is used as an enemy of a good character. So you will see Delilah in the story was used as that symbol. The Philistines, who were they? They were the enemy. The Philistines do not have a specific metaphysical meaning, but they can be termed strangers, emigrants, foreigners, forces foreign to spirit. The Philistines were opposed to all true spiritual discipline. They worshipped strange gods in the form of animals and resorted to all kinds of sorcery and soothsaying, fortune telling, voodoo, exorcism, magic, casting spells, witch-like, and for some of us, obeah. These are the main characters in the Bible story of Samson and Delilah. Now, the story is found in Judges chapter 16, 1 to 31. Don't get scared. I'm not going to read 31 verses while you sit there, but here and there, I will read it. One day, Samson went to the Philistine city of Gaza and spent the night with a prostitute. Word soon spread that he had been seen in the city, so the police were alerted, and many men of the city lay in wait all night at the city gate to capture him if he tried to leave. In the morning, they thought, when there is enough light, we will find him and kill him. Samson stayed in bed with the girl until midnight, then went out to the city gates. Remember, physical strength. And he lifted them with the 2 gate posts right out of the ground. He put them on his shoulders and carried them to the top of the mountain across from Hebron. So when they were coming for him in the morning, they wouldn't find any gates or anything. Samson found that was not enough because he is moving away from the presence of the Lord. Later on, he fell in love with a girl named Delilah over in the valley of Zorek. The 5 heads of the Philistine nation went personally to her and demanded that she find out from Samson what made him so strong, so that they would know how to overpower and subdue him and put him in chains. Because remember, physical strength. They wanted to get rid of him so they would be free from him altogether. And they promised Delilah, 5 of them, we will give each of you $1,000. So $5,000 she's looking to make. So Delilah begged Samson to tell her his secret. Please tell me, Samson, why you are so strong, she pleaded. She used all her womanly charm. I don't think anyone could ever capture you. Well, Samson replied, if I were tied with 7 raw leather bowstrings, I would become as weak as anyone else. So she felt, oh, I've got it now. So they bought her the 7 bowstrings, and while he slept, she tied him with them. Some men were hiding in the next room. So as soon as she had tied him up, she exclaimed, Samson, the Philistines are here. And then he snapped the bowstrings like cotton thread. And so his secret was not discovered. So that's number 1. She fooled him. Afterwards, Delilah said to him, you're making fun of me. You told me a lie. Please tell me how you can be captured. And of course, she's using, I guess, all her womanly charms to get him. He said to her, okay, if I am tied with brand new ropes, which have never been used, I will be as weak as other men. So here again, she thought, I've got him. Delilah took new ropes and tied him with them. The men were hiding in the next room as before. Again, Delilah exclaimed, Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you. But he broke the ropes from his arms like a spider web. And then she got really mad at him and she said, "You have mocked me again and told me more lies. Now tell me how you can really be captured." He said, "Okay, if you weave my hair into your loom, the knitting machine, you will find my weakness." So while he slept, she did just that, and then screamed out, "The Philistines have come, Samson." And he woke up and yanked his hair away, breaking the loom. Well, this time, you know we women, she got really mad. And she said, "How can you say you love me when you don't confide in me?" She whined. "You've made fun of me 3 times now, and you still haven't told me what makes you so strong." She nagged at him, some of us know that very well, every day until he couldn't stand it any longer and finally told her his secret. And this is what he said. "My hair has never been cut," he confessed, "for I've been a Nazarite to God since before my birth. If my hair were cut, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as anyone else." Delilah realized that he had finally told her the truth, so she sent for the 5 Philistine leaders. She said to them, "Come just this once more," she said, "for this time he has told me everything." So they brought the money with them. She lulled him to sleep with his head in her lap, and you can imagine how he fell asleep. And they brought in a barber. All right, let's get back on track. And they brought in a barber and cut off his hair. Delilah began to hit him, but she could see that his strength was leaving him. Then she screamed, "The Philistines are here to capture you, Samson." And he woke up and thought, "I will do as before. I'll just shake myself free." But he didn't realize that the Lord had left him. When you disobey God, this is what happens. So the Philistines captured him and gouged his eyes out with bronze chains. And so he lost his 2 eyes, and they bound him in chains and made him in prison, and he had to grind grain in a mill. Okay, but we're not going to get there yet. You see what happens when you move away from God. It happens in our life too, because this story, all Bible stories, are your story as well as mine. Look at what happened when you yielded to the 5 senses and the feeling nature, which is Delilah, cutting off his hair. His hair represents vitality, strength. When the vital principle is taken away, the strength goes with it. This weakens the body and it finally perishes. So here we are. He has disobeyed God. He let the outer forces take charge of him. Samson's great desire was to conquer the Philistines, but he allowed himself to be betrayed by yielding to unredeemed forces in his own being. He yielded to the 5 senses and the feeling nature, and he moved away from the presence of the Lord. He allowed the outer forces to influence him and move him away from spirit. That could sound familiar. I don't know about you, but I know it has happened to me. And not as with the giants and the Philistines, but sometimes, I would get up and I have a lot of work to do. And I say, I'm going to get up at 5 o'clock and start this baking. And that's all in my mind to get things done. I forget everything about praying and thanking God for the day, and I start. And you get into a habit. The next day you do the same thing. And a few days you find things are not going right. Everything seems to be topsy-turvy. And then, very quickly, I realize, but I have not spent any time with the Lord. And I take responsibility, and I get back on track. That happens to all of us. We let the outer forces, and we'll talk about that later on, take charge of us. He allowed the outer forces to influence him and move him away from his spirit. Once you are on a spiritual path, forces that are governed by the ego will always attempt to prevail. You know, as soon as you say, I am going to follow the Lord in a special way this week, I am not going to say anything negative to anybody, and you're all set to go. And before an hour, you are tempted. And sometimes you forget, and the negative comes out. It happens to all of us because the outer forces are waiting there. As soon as you make a mistake, they slide right in, and they take charge. So you have to be always on the pathway. Because we are human beings operating through personal mind, we are susceptible to the forces from the outside. We know that. This story is our story. We too are influenced by the ego and forces from the outside. Let us continue to read from the rest of the story and see what happened to Samson when he became blind. We remember he's in the prison now, and he has become blind. The Philistine captured him, and they had a great festival because they have got Samson. He's blind, his hair is cut off, so it means he's weak, he cannot see, and they felt, we have got it made. The people made sacrifices to their god, Dagon, and they said, and they praised that God and say, our God has delivered our enemy to us. And they were half drunk by that time because they're making merry. They didn't think anything could ever happen to them because we have got Samson. And of course, Delilah got her money and she went. So they decided, let's get him out here. He cannot see. He has no strength. Let's make fun of him. So he was brought from the prison and made to stand at the center of the temple between the two pillars supporting the roof. Samson said to the boy who was leading him by the hand, place my hands against the two pillars. I want to lean against them. By then, the temple was completely filled with people. The 5 Philistine leaders were there, as well as 3,000 people in the balconies who were waiting to make fun of Samson. But then, while he was in prison, his hair began to grow back. But those who were looking after him, they were too drunk to realize that his hair is growing back. And he said, at that time, he remembered the Lord. And he prayed to the Lord and said, O Lord Jehovah, remember me again. Please strengthen me again. Please strengthen me one more time so I can pay back the Philistines for the loss of at least one of my eyes. He went to God. He remembered his God. And he went to him and asked for help. God never turns us away. And he's always on time. Remember that. And remember what Samson, very smart, he asked the fella, I want to lean against. He's blind and he plays the blind part very well. And he prayed and he got his strength back. And Simon pushed against the Philistines, the pillars with all his might. And he said, Lord, let me die with the Philistines. And he pushed and crashed down upon the Philistine leaders and all the people. So those he killed at the moment of his death were more than those he had killed during his entire lifetime. Now you see what happened. He prayed. God heard his prayer. And what happened? He delivered, he was able to get rid of the Philistines. So he did what he was set out to do from the beginning. Only he went down a strange pathway. And it happens to all of us. We begin to do things the God's way, and then we are sidetracked. But most of us who come here would remember that we can pray, and then we can get back on track. These forces, this story is our story. So how can we ward off these forces when they attack us? What can we do? What are the forces that attack us? Hatred, envy, jealousy, vindictiveness, unforgiving, and people on the job who give you a hard time. What you can do, we can follow what is said in Ephesians 6, 10 to 17. I know you know it because it says, "Be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might." And the passage goes on to say, "Put on the shield of faith, the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit." When you read that passage, it gives you strength. And another one that you could read too is Isaiah 26, verse 3. "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee." We have to go back and talk to God. Now, we see that Samson here grew back, and he got his strength back, and he was able to overcome the Philistines. So he did what he set out to do. Another passage that I like very much, and you have heard it in this church many times, that you could use a lot, is Proverbs 3, 5 and 6. "Trust in the Lord with all thy heart, and lean not to thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." Now that's a story of Samson and Delilah. There are other stories in the Bible where characters disobeyed God. Samson and Delilah was not the only story. What about Adam and Eve in Genesis? Eve took away the strength of Adam in like manner, because the serpent, the sense conscious, was the one who caused his downfall, because he tempted Eve, and the feeling nature with Eve and the serpent, the sense consciousness, they both went to Adam. And Adam forgot God and disobeyed him. And you know the story. They were thrown out of the Garden of Eden. And you can read it in Genesis. Man's disobedience to the divine law is the underlying cause of his suffering. We say forgetfulness too. But man's disobedience to the divine law is the underlying cause of his suffering. Another example of disobedience in the Bible is Saul. Not Saul who became Paul, not Saul of Tarsus. Saul, who was king, was chosen by Samuel. When first chosen as King Saul, he was very humble. In the early part of his reign, Saul lived up to the best expectations of Samuel. But later on, he felt powerful, so he became arbitrary and dictatorial, and also disobedient. Saul is typical of the person who begins a great task with true humility of spirit and accomplishes much. Then gradually he lets selfishness rule and becomes dictatorial and even cruel. The great lesson to be learned from a close study of the life of Saul is that to continue to unfold spiritually and to be successful, one must live very close to spirit and must be always humble and obedient before the Lord. We will make mistakes, but we can quickly rectify them by coming back and keeping our mind stayed on God. Outer success and personal glory tend to make one all-sufficient to himself. And when you become all-sufficient, you shut off the light of spirit because you think, I can do it all. In other words, I am the boss. And there are many other stories in the Bible that we can find about disobedience. Samson's life is a warning of how our strength and ability may be depleted when we do not keep ourselves in harmony with spirit. One of our 5 principles is practicing the presence. Begin your day with God. Don't get up and rush, as I did and I still do sometimes, because we fall short. Begin your day with God. Let him direct your steps every day. In the daily inspiration, I think for July, there was a passage that says, when you get up in the morning, say to God, God, what do you want me to do today? What do you want me to say? To whom shall I speak? And what shall I say? You don't have to do it exactly like that, but that is saying, ask God for direction. When you ask God for direction, your day goes beautifully. You do things that you never even planned to do, and you had put on the back burner for weeks saying, I'll do this, I'll do this. And eventually, the day comes and you do it without even planning. Do not separate yourself from the presence of the Lord, for when we do, we suffer. Make God your partner. Talk to him. You can talk to him as you talk to anybody. And let him direct your steps. Let him be your guardian night and day. And do not be like Samson. Do not give in to the outer forces. Be on the watch out. They are there, waiting for a chance, as I said before, to slide in. Let us know that with God, all things are possible. And we too shall overcome the Philistines in our life. Thank you so much.
Let's celebrate. Let's give it a song. Wait. You gotta stand up for this. Let's celebrate life. Let's give it a chance.
Let's celebrate freedom, peace, and love each day of the year. Let's run up the flag so people know that life is great when it's in Christ alone. Glory, glory, hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. The truth has set us free. Let's celebrate life. Let's give it a song. Let's sing about peace and love and freedom all the day long. Let's sing forever the same. To be alive and living hip hip. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Let's celebrate life. Let's give it a toast. Let's talk about freedom, peace, and goodness and more. Let's send up a flame. Life is good when you start living. Come celebrate the life worth living. Celebrate the life worth living. Hip hip hooray, glory. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. The truth has set us free. You may be seated. Any Delilahs in here? Any Samsons in here? Philistines. We are all of those. In the midst of life, we take on roles. Protagonist, antagonist, all sorts of roles. But sometimes, as Bianca was saying, we have to remember who and what we are. That we as spiritual beings have to find ways to be governed by Spirit all the time and listen to that still small voice within us. We will be tempted, but yield not into temptation. That's a practice. All of us fall sometimes because the Delilahs come looking good, looking not so good. They come as food. Hello now, Delilah comes as food. You ever plan a diet? Hello now, Delilah comes in all forms. So at this time, I would like to say to those who have been streaming, thank you very much for streaming with us today. We do hope that something said and done could make a difference in your life or help you make a difference in your life. We welcome you back next week. And please remember that next week, our Adventure in Faith programs start. Go to the website, check it out, see all the events that have been planned for it, and make sure you invite a friend who may not be in your city but lives in Toronto to come to Toronto here at Verity Centre. Thank you very much. Namaskar. God bless. And to you who are here, did you